Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're doing well. We are back in the PMDG 737-800 for another tutorial in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and following a specific request from a subscriber to the channel, the focus for today's video is going to be VNAV and understanding how it functions within the aircraft and how we configure everything correctly. So in basic terms then, VNAV stands for vertical navigation, and it manages the vertical path and speed of the plane, as opposed to LNAV, which is our lateral navigation or horizontal guidance for our route. But for today, let's focus on VNAV. So very briefly then, we have three stages of our flight where we can configure the VNAV path. We have our climb, cruise and descent, and there's a page for each of those in the FMC, which we will take a look at now. So firstly then, let's go into our climb page, and that gives us some key information. We've got our cruise altitude, we've got our target speeds and any restrictions that there might be in the flight plan. And then we've also got our time in Zulu and distance to our top of climb at the top right there. And we can also select whether we want the plane to climb with optimum performance for maximum rate of climb or maximum angle. Moving on to our second VNAV page then for the cruise, which again gives us our cruise altitude along with our optimum and maximum flight altitudes, and then our target speeds, and we also have our current wind information along with our estimated fuel on arrival. So to our final VNAV page then for our descent, now that gives us our end of descent altitude along with any target speeds and any restraints we may have. Then we also have our time and distance to our top of descent. And then we also have a button for our descent forecast, which is really important to set up, so let's go through that now. So let's just quickly get our SimBrief flight plan on screen for you guys. And if we scroll all the way down to our wind information section, which is down here, and if we look towards the bottom of our wind information, we have our descent, and we have various altitudes, wind speeds and wind directions which we can input into the FMC. So I'll select three altitudes that are sort of relevant to us. We're flying at flight level 290, and first of all we want to put in our transition altitude, which is 6,000 feet, so we enter that, and we also want to add in our QNH for our arrival airport, which is 1013, so we'll drop that in. Right, so we want to add in our first altitude for our descent forecast, which is flight level 200, so we drop that in on the left, and then we can add in our wind direction and speed as per our SimBrief flight plan, which is 257 degrees at 19 knots. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now we repeat the process for our next altitude, which is flight level 150, and our corresponding winds from SimBrief are 317 degrees at 17 knots. And to our final altitude of flight level 100, and our winds are 320 degrees at 26 knots. There we go, so we can drop that in, and then we just need to execute that, and there we go, that's our descent forecast complete, and that just helps the plane calculate our vertical path more accurately for our descent. Okay, in our descent page then, it's showing 27 miles until our top of descent with an ETA of 12:06, so yeah, we've got about 3 minutes until our top of descent, so we just need to configure a few things before we start descending. So we just need to confirm that LNAV is engaged on the MCP before we pass over our top of descent, and that just means the aircraft is going to pull all our altitudes and speeds as we have it set in the FMC, and any other descent modes we engage, for example level change or vertical speed mode, will override what we've got set in the FMC. If we take a look at the PFD, we can see the plane is maintaining our target altitude of 29,000 feet and also our target speed of Mach 7.8. And I'll just double check on our descent page on the FMC, so we've got about 14 miles till our top of descent. And I'm just going to leave the descent page shown on our FMC, and we'll come over to the first officer's side and pop it into the progress page, just so we can see our upcoming waypoints, what time we're going to be sort of passing through those, our expected fuel at each one, and it also gives us our top of descent on there as well. So it's always good to sort of double check our progress page. And let's just have a look at our legs page too, just so we can see any upcoming altitude constraints. Okay, so we've got about 7 miles till our top of descent, so let's have a look at our legs page and just pick an altitude that we're going to enter into our NCP, and I think we're going to go down to 4,000 feet to start with. So let's go up to the MCP and wind that in now. So as long as that's selected before we pass over our top of descent marker, the plane will automatically start descending by itself, hopefully, as long as we're in VNAV mode. So just ensure you have VNAV mode selected, and as we pass over you should see the plane start to make its descent. And as I mentioned earlier, as long as the plane is in VNAV mode, it will follow all our speed constraints and altitudes that we have set in the FMC shown here on the right hand side. Obviously if we come out of VNAV mode at any time, either to use level change or vertical speed mode, then that will override those figures. Right, and as you can see now, our vertical path is now displayed on the right hand side of our nav display. So that means we've passed over our top of descent, and as you can see the plane has started descending quite nicely actually. So what we'll do is monitor our descent for a while, just so you can see how the plane handles VNAV, and if we hop outside the aircraft we should be able to see the nose pitching down slightly as well. So if I just come round to the right slightly, yeah, and as you can see the nose is pitching down quite nicely, and that is our aircraft descending following the VNAV path. Right, so we're now passing through 22,000 feet and the aircraft is following our vertical path quite nicely. If you look at the nav display you can see the magenta triangles just displaying that we're sort of bang on profile, and it's also showing VNAV path and LNAV in the top of the PFD. Okay, so we've now passed through 20,000 feet, so let's take another look at our descent page and just go over a bit more information. So we're maintaining our target speed of Mach 7.8 nicely. We can see we've got an altitude constraint at our next waypoint at Bordy of at or below flight level 170, and it's also showing us our vertical speed of 2,800 feet per minute, so that's quite a nice bit of information to have as well. Okay, so we're about halfway through our descent, so I think we're going to leave it there for today. And you can see how the plane handles VNAV really nicely in the PMDG, and it would happily carry on all the way down to 4,000 feet as we have in the window. And if at any point you do find yourself a little bit off profile, then you can always intervene using either level change or vertical speed mode just to get yourself back on profile. But that concludes today's tutorial on VNAV in the PMDG 737-800. Hopefully I've given you a basic grasp of how the systems work within the plane and how we go about configuring our vertical path. If you found it interesting or maybe learnt something new, give it a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks very much for watching. Bye bye.